This is a global original podcast with Pop Buzz. A quick warning, this podcast contains some adult language. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Coming Out Chats, the podcast where we ask two guests to open up to each other about their coming out journeys. Sometimes our guests might know each other, or it might be the first time they've ever met. Either way, they're about to dive in at the deep end and discover an important part of how they became the people they are today. Our first guest this week is Scottish drag artist Lawrence Chaney.
My name is Lawrence Chaney.
Since they snatched the crown with their quick wit and gorgeous looks, Lawrence has toured extensively and released their first book, Drag Queen of Scots, the do's and don'ts of a drag superstar.
I did drag before I came out.
In the book, Lawrence shares heartfelt moments from their past, from being bullied as a child to what it's like to date as a drag queen. And they give an insight to their journey towards acceptance and better mental health.
I felt different before I felt gay.
Joining Lawrence this week is their friend and fellow drag artist, Victoria Scone.
Hello there, my name is Victoria Scone.
Victoria recently competed in the third series of Drag Race UK and made history as the first AFAB drag queen to appear on the show. AFAB stands for Assigned Female at Birth.
She was like, you're not gay, are you?
Prior to Victoria's appearance, Drag Race had been criticised by the drag community for not including cis female performers.
Selfishly, you think about yourself first. You're like, I'm going on Drag Race. Like, this is going to be great for me. But really, this means an awful lot for other people, for women, for non-binary people, for trans women and trans men. This is like a big part of representation that we don't see.
Noting the significance of this moment, Victoria was greeted with a standing ovation by her fellow competitors when she first walked in the workroom.
God, that was awkward having to call myself a pioneer, Christ.
Her inclusion is being celebrated as a milestone for better representation of drag performers from all different backgrounds in mainstream media. My name is Woodrow White, managing editor of popbuzz.com, and this is Coming Out Chats with Lawrence Chaney and Victoria Scone.
Today we're talking about coming out stories, Vic. Let's start at the beginning.
A very good place
where
to
all
start.
good things start. Yes, where all good things do start. Where did you grow up and what was it like there?
So I grew up in Portsmouth. Portsmouth, the very, very far south of the UK. Kind of in a small town. A bit later on as well, called Stubbington. What a cool name is that? Stubbington.
Stubbington. I've just Stubbingtoned my toe.
Absolutely. So it was a pleasant upbringing. So my coming out story, I think we'll probably delve into this later, but it was actually quite late in life. But I do have sort of memories of me being confused about my sexuality and relating that to my body from a young age, and like sort of being a more masculine presenting female. So I remember being teased for having a six-pack when I was younger. Can you imagine? I know.
I mean, listen, I know what it's like.
I know.
People bully me all the time for having a six-pack of Coca-Cola. Sorry.
Yeah, but can you imagine, like, the privilege of being teased for having a six-pack now? I could only dream. But I just remember being, like, thinking, am I too butch? Like, questioning my body from such a young age. And that's probably very traumatizing, really, if we think back on it. But yeah, my actual coming out wasn't until far later in life. So from a young age, I don't have much experience in terms of negativity, I guess, other than physically. What about you? What was it like for you growing up?
Well, for me growing up, we've spoken before about this on the road when we've been drunk. Mm-hmm. So it's cool talking to you about this now because I felt different before I felt gay. And I remember being like, oh, this guy is fit, but I'm still going to marry a woman. Oh, I just always saw myself. I guess it's because in media, it was just the done thing. You know, there's Disney princesses and a prince and all that. So I always knew that I was gay. And especially with my interests, I mean, I loved Doctor Who and the Avengers where a woman wore cat suits made out of leather. Do you know what I mean? That's the most gay thing ever. So I always knew, but it was that kind of inner shame that I felt. But I mean, I was still bullied in school, and I was bullied even though I wasn't gay. So that was a big deterrent for me to come out, was because I was like, geez, these kids are laying into me already and I've not even told them I'm a poof. Imagine what happens then, that's going to be the worst. So I only came out when I was 18.
Really?
I came out when I was 18. What age did you come out?
So
you had a boyfriend.
I did, yeah. But even when I was with a boyfriend, I was sort of out as bisexual. Maybe not to my parents, but to everyone around me, because I went to dance school and it was very, very gay, very queer.
Very gay. Very gay.
Hi, gay. So yeah, I was sort of out as bisexual from maybe, I don't know, 22 or something, but had never been in like a full-time relationship with a woman. But I didn't come out to my parents until I was 26.
Oh.
So literally just about 2 years ago.
That's pretty fab.
Yes.
That's pretty camp.
Yes, because I think I had a lot of sort of internalized homophobia, and it was just never an option. It was just always an expectation for me to have babies and be with a man. And I was like, that's not really something I want to do. And as you said, I was with a man, a lovely gentleman, who is now my best friend. And my agent. Yeah. He is now also gay. So we were like two queer people that just found each other as best friends.
Beards.
And just fell in love with each other as people. And there was no real reason for us not to be pals afterwards. So we're just the best of friends.
Well, I remember when it came to my coming out, I told myself in school, because this is the main thing I still want to highlight, how insane it is that gay people, trans people, queer people in general still need to come out. Straight people don't need to come out. There's no straight person going, Mum, I need to tell you, I like lassies. It's never a thing.
No.
But it's expected of us kind of queer folk, and I think that's really backwards. So when I was about 17, when I kind of knew what was happening, but I still didn't like saying the word gay. I think gay sounded, because everyone used it as an insult at school, I just think it was just, ugh. But I told myself in my head, I said, I'm not coming out until I have a boyfriend, until I have a reason to say something. Because no point saying I'm gay and then it's like your mum's like,
where are they then?
But yeah, it was a weird kind of sequence of events. But then I eventually got a boyfriend and I had to come out. So yeah.
What happened when you first came out? Who did you tell first?
So unofficially, my mum will kill me if I say this, but the first person I told was my sister, not my mum. And my mum and me are very close, don't get it mistaken, but I get very nervous about my mum because my mum has the same sense of humour as me. So she would crack jokes about anyone and everyone if they were effeminate, if they were, it's where I get most of my material from, if I'm honest. So, but, I was so worried, did my mum think this about gay people? Did my mum actually hate gay people? You don't know. So I went to my sister and I said, Tamsin, I'm gay. And then she was like, yeah, we know.
Duh.
Yeah, we guessed, Lawrence. And I literally told her, I said, do you think I can tell Mum? And my sister was like, yeah, 100%. Mum absolutely already knows, but also like, we'll be so cool with it. So I told my mum, and she was so supportive as well, so loving. And she just said everything that mattered. And, she said that I was loved, and she just gave me such overwhelming positivity. And it was so weird because she never raised her voice, never did anything that would worry me. But in that moment when you come out, you always get emotional. It's that like, Mum, I'm gay. And then my mum was just so supportive. And I was like, Mum, do you reckon you could tell like Dad and the cousins and all that? And my mum said, Lawrence, this is your story. This is your truth. I will never force anyone I will not ever force you to be anything you don't want to be.
Mm-hmm.
I want you to be you. And part of that journey is you speaking to your dad on your own. You can do it. Do you want me to get him through from the conservative? I'll bring him through and you just talk to him. I said, okay, Mum, absolutely fabulous. And my mum, out of nowhere, just goes, Nick! Your son wants to tell you he's gay. Come through. I was like, Mum, what is going on?
I want to meet your mum.
So embarrassing. And my dad's a man of very few words. He normally just grunts and he says about 2 words a year. And then he comes through and he said, Lawrence, do you want to go to the shops? And I was like, he said more than 2 words. Something's about to go down. I thought it was going to be left in a ditch, but we drove to the shops and we got loads of chocolate, obviously. And my dad was so nice. He was like, oh, so you have a boyfriend? What's his name? We need to have him over for dinner. And I was like, the only one that's eating him out is me. So it was really, really nice and a real moment where I was like pinching myself because of how lucky I am to have that family.
Because not everyone has that.
Yeah, what was your coming out experience like? How did your parents kind of take it? What was that experience?
I'm pretty sure they knew anyway before I did. Dad pretty much asked me if I was a lesbian. Well, I remember my mum, she's going to hate me for this as well, but when she'd found out that I broke up with my male partner, she was like, you're not gay, are you?
You're not a lesbian. Lesbian.
Yeah. And she's also going to hate me for this. She said, she made a comment, which was probably not the best thing to say if your child comes out. But she said, oh, does that mean I'm never going to be a grandma? Like, am I never going to have grandkids? And that hurt me so much at the time. It was just like, I mean, you could definitely say far worse things, but that definitely stung a bit. And like, of course, I could still have kids if I wanted them. Bloody hate the things. But if I wanted to, queer people can be excellent parents and are and will always be. So probably not the best thing to say, but there could be worse things. But other than that, it was a perfectly lovely coming out.
Well, I was going to say isn't that so surreal that when you come out, you're expected to know all of your life ambitions and everything you want to achieve in life as a queer person? Am I having children? Mum, well, I'm 18, so maybe like when I'm like 25 or like 29 with a long-term partner, maybe. But it's so weird how you're just kind of assumed to, well, are you having children? Well, yeah, if it goes down this route. But there's so many other roads. It's not just this conventional world that we live in where it's like you're straight,
reproducing.
You go to university, you have wains, you're a filthy breeder, you know.
dirty breeders.
Filthy breeders. There are a lot of them.
I don't want to be this like breeding machine. We can all have very fulfilling lives without having children if we want them or don't want them. Like that's not my priority in my life.
Yeah, we're not slagging off. If you want kids, fair enough. But I'm cool with a wee gobbling a swally. Do you know what I mean? I'm cool with that. Victoria, did you ever find any kind of relationships with friends or family? Did they change around you when you came out? Did anyone, distance themselves from you? Did anyone get closer? What kind of happened?
I think my parents probably felt like they knew me a bit more, and maybe that helped with our relationship, and they felt like they were like let in more into my life because they have an excellent relationship with my girlfriend now, with Danny. Because Danny, my girlfriend, she loves football, so Dad's got the football, daughter that he never had. He's got that now. Yeah. He's got that great relationship, and my mum loves Danny so much. So they probably feel like they're more part of my life now. And other than that, I don't think anyone distanced themselves. And if they did, then I didn't notice. And good riddance. What about you? Did it change for you?
I'm kind of the same. I think I don't think anyone that I know of distanced themselves. If they did, they've done a fabulous job of it, doing it without me noticing. But yeah, I don't think anyone did. I definitely, I felt awkward bringing like my boyfriend home for the first time. And I felt awful because my sister was never allowed a boyfriend in the house in a room without mum in.
Right.
My mum was very kind of anal about that. Big bang boom. But then, I was 19 and she let my boyfriend stay in my room. And my sister was fuming. But my sister, then explained, she was like, it's got nothing to do with the fact that you're gay. She was like, I'm just annoyed because I wasn't allowed to do that.
Yeah.
And, how come you're allowed to do that? But I like to think I opened my mother's mind and her whole, to this whole new world.
Yeah, a whole new world, if you will. So when you came out, were you able to find like your chosen family, as they say, of other queer people in your area?
Well, I guess this may be a bit weird, but I did drag before I came out.
What?
Yeah. Have I not told you about this?
No.
Yes, I did drag before coming out. So I was fully doing shows at the Rabbit Hole, with Alice.
Yeah.
I had like a residency and all that in Edinburgh, which is where I met my boyfriend. So I always explained it to my parents beforehand. I was like, these comedians, what I was doing is comedy, and I still do comedy. So I tried to explain it like, well, listen, David Walliams isn't gay. Stanley Baxter isn't gay. And now Stanley Baxter has now come out and he is gay. But, I was very like, no, straight people can do it too, mother. It's absolutely fine being in a gay club with gay people, but I'm straight. But yes, I kind of met a lot of, trans folk and non-binary folk and queer people really before coming out. So I was able to hear the nice stories, the bad stories about, some of my friends had, fallen out with their family or had kind of tumultuous relationships with their family. So I was able to kind of take my time and ease myself into coming out. So I was very lucky I had a chosen family before coming out, which was great.
Definitely.
What about you? Did you because you've only done drag since 2018?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah, how did you know?
Yes. I've watched your first performance.
Have you watched it?
On YouTube. It's on YouTube. Yeah, we watched it. You singing.
Oh, yes. And I do that reveal. Yes.
Yes.
Well, I've been sort of surrounded by queer people, like literally my whole life. Because I did panto from such a young age and being like in dance schools, you've got usually like a gay male teacher. So I've been within the queer community. And I have a memory from a young age that the receptionist of the dance school that I went to in Portsmouth was a trans woman. And it was just completely not like, well, it is normal, but it was just completely nothing to me. I started when I was 3 years old. So I just had this relationship where I just remember this beautiful trans woman being like a part of my life, and it was completely normal. It's completely the norm. So I don't know, I wouldn't say that's had an effect on my sort of queer identity, like being surrounded by queer people, but it probably has made it easier to come out, even if I came out so late. So I've always known that I was queer or bisexual or pansexual. But you know what? I actually discovered the other day that I haven't really looked into the terminology of demisexual. Are you familiar with demisexual?
No, is that like when you like Demi Lovato?
And only Demi Lovato. I might be wrong here, but I believe it's when you fall in love with like the person as a person, like you fall in love with their personality. I believe.
Let me literally look that up. Demisexual.
I think I'm probably getting the wording wrong, but I believe it's like you fall in love with their soul.
Demisexual people only feel sexually attracted to someone when they have an emotional bond with that person. They can be gay, straight, bisexual, or pansexual, and may have any gender identity. Wow.
Yeah. So when I read that the other day, can you only believe I really found that out the other day? I was like, oh my God, I actually really connect with that, because I don't fall in love with someone physically or anything to do with genitals at all. I fall in love with who I fall in love with. So in your scene in
Glasgow. In Glasgow.
No, I was going to say Edinburgh. That's very wrong. I'm so sorry. Edinburgh's the...
That's polar opposite.
Couldn't be more wrong. Were there any drag artists that specifically helped you along your journey?
Oh my God, definitely. I've told you about her many times, but Alice Rabbit is just so amazing. And the funny thing is, I have, loved Alice as a friend, a sister, a brother. We've hated each other, like scorned enemies. But we always come back round, whenever we're put in a room together, it's our sense of humour is so similar. If one thing happens across the bar, we'll look at each other and it's just magic. We really, really get each other. And Alice really taught me. Alice is plus size. So Alice was one of the only people that I saw in my scene. Well, Alice is from Edinburgh and I was in Glasgow, but because Scotland's quite small, we all kind of intermingle. It's kind of like inbreeding. But Alice would perform in Glasgow, and I just loved seeing her perform the best out of every queen. She was a top-notch performer. I mean, I'm talking as if this is a eulogy. She's still alive. But
God rest her
she
soul.
just performed so well. She danced, she high-kicked, she split, she death-dropped, she did Jaeger bombs. All that, she was just so, so good. And nothing... Like, I literally cannot tell you the serotonin that was released when I saw audience members' faces when she walked on stage and they were like, who's this? And then it's like, bitch, when my pussy pops and yours don't, and it turns into a Vogue remix of Pussy Pop and she just starts voguing. Mate, when I say everyone's jaws were dropped, understatement. She was so, so amazing. And I think out of drag, we really got each other as well. Like I've written about her in my book. There's a whole chapter dedicated to her. So she definitely kind of guided me along a path of really how to make a career for myself in drag as a plus size person and how to, not get bitter when these things happen to plus size people, where we get cropped out of pictures in favour of the thinner ones. All these kind of things that come with being the kind of plus size queen in the room. She really, really guided me through that and made me really accept being fat as a person. And I hate when we've spoken about this all the time. We'd literally talk about this every time we meet. I hate when people have a problem with fat people calling themselves fat. I am fat. I literally am BMI level. I'm fat. I'm not saying I'm ugly.
No.
I'm not saying I'm ugly in the slightest, but I am very fat. So there needs to be this kind of understanding. And it was Alice who helped me understand the difference between fat and beautiful.
Because fat is not a swear word.
Yeah, fat is not. Listen, and even if it was, it's a fierce word.
Absolutely.
Yeah. What about you? So you mentioned this trans woman. Were they someone you looked up to, or were there other drag artists in the scene? What happened?
Well, the trans woman was from such a young age, but they are sort of embedded deep in my memory of just someone living sort of unapologetically themselves. So that's a very beautiful thing. But in terms of when I was older, I was not really surrounded by many queer women or many lesbians. I don't think
there's
we have
not many lesbians in the public eye. Yeah.
No, there's not. There's not enough. We have some, but they're usually sort of an older lesbian, which is of course lovely. But for a young queer woman, you want to look up to someone that's sort of maybe a bit more your age, and if they've done it from this age, then I can. But in terms of just coming out of my queerness, I think I've just been surrounded by confident gay men a lot of my life, And that's why I'm very comfortable in my confidence, because I think women should have more of the confidence of the white man, because you don't see enough women talking about themselves positively and being totally confident in how good they are at something in their job, in their life. I don't see it enough, and I want to see it more. When people ask me about, how does it feel being on Drag Race, and are you scared? Are you nervous? It's a lot of pressure. I'm like, no, I'm very good at what I do. I feel thoroughly confident in what I'm about to do, and I love it, and I love what I do.
I'm so glad you're confident, because all winners need to be confident. So I'm just glad that my Series 3 winner is confident, at least.
Spoiler alert.
So when you got cast on Drag Race, we're talking a lot about coming out, and we've also spoken about, there's not a lot of queer women kind of in your age bracket that you can look up to. So what does it feel like being on Drag Race as a woman, but also a lesbian, a queer woman? Did you think when you got cast on it, whoa, this is history in the making? Or were you just like, here we go, this is the new gig, we're going for it?
It is interesting you say that, because I think at first it didn't quite twig how much of a pioneer, oh God, that feels wrong to say about myself, but I would be for a lot of people. Very selfishly, you think about yourself first, you're like, I'm going on Drag Race, like this is going to be great for me. But really this means an awful lot for other people, for women, for non-binary people, for trans women and trans men. This is like a big part of representation that we don't see, because notoriously we only have majority cis men, cis queer men in the public eye that are part of the queer spectrum. So it's a lot for representation.
I've told you this before, but I think it's just such a beautiful thing, and I never realised it, because listen, when you go to a gay club, a queer safe space in any form, right? It is not just cis men that are there. There are trans performers, there's burlesque entertainers, there's a wide array of people there that aren't just, cis men in wigs, And I guess I'd never thought like, oh yeah, that's missing from Drag Race, duh. I guess I was just ignorant to that. But it was when I heard, now I shouldn't really say this, I should say that it was when you were announced, but my flatmate heard that you were rumoured to be on it.
Yes.
And we'd never met before that, so I didn't realise, my flatmate was like, it's rumoured Victoria Scone's on, and I went, who the fuck is Victoria Scone? Who the fuck is this person? And who's it? Sir Sweater, you'll need to do it again. Who's it? But, she was explaining to me, she said, Victoria Scone is a female drag queen, a drag queen that is born female. I was like, whoa, there is no way. And my flatmate, when it was confirmed, when you obviously went and disappeared and you weren't allowed phones and all that, my flatmate started crying, because finally they had a chance of being on Drag Race, because my flatmate's a trans woman. So I'd never thought in a million years about it from that perspective, because we do get caught up in that like self thing, because drag is self-expression. You're like, well, I can do it. I'm doing me. You do you, and all that stuff. And it's actually like, it blew my mind when I heard you got cast. And I was like, there is no way. There is no way. I cannot believe this. And then when you got announced, I was like, Lawrence Chaney, who? Like, you have blown the world up. And I think it's a sign of where we need to do better as a society as well, because so many people are judging you already based on what is or isn't in between your legs, rather than your vocal ability, your talent with makeup, your talent with costume, all this kind of stuff they aren't caring about, and they just care what's in between your legs. And I think it's going to cause a conversation that's much needed. So thank you for being a pioneer and sharing it with the world. And I can call you a pioneer. You can't, but I can.
Thank you. God, that was awkward having to call myself a pioneer. Christ.
Yes, I know. Well, listen, that's why I had to do it back, see?
Everything's right in the world. Well, so tell me, darling, how has you coming out shaped who you are today?
That is a fully loaded question,
Yes.
Victoria Scone. You're just coming in with them,
Because
aren't
we
you?
are both very spherical shaped.
I was going to say, when you mention journeys shaping things, it's normally a journey to the Tunnock's Tea Cake Warehouse in Scotland.
Yes.
Whoa. That's a hard question because I think I'm very self-critical of myself, and I think that's a good thing to be. I think it's really good to be self-critical and be your own worst critic, because there's nothing worse than, we know a lot of drag queens like this as well. They come off stage after doing a number that was questionable and they were like, they loved it, let's face it. And you're like, were we even at the same show? Are we even aware of what's going on? And it's so weird that... I guess I'm just very kind of critical of myself, but I would rather that than be delusional. But I learnt through coming out not to be so critical, because if I was critical in the beginning, saying, what if my mum doesn't like me? My mum might judge me, all this stuff. But in actual fact, she didn't. She was really respectful and loving. So that taught me to just ease up a little bit more and relax, and not everything is worst case scenario in your head. Well, what about you? Because it is a fully loaded question. Sorry to throw it on you.
I believe that since I've come out, I've become so much more self-confident. Do you know what? I think there's nothing more powerful than a woman that does not need a man sexually, physically, financially, emotionally. I think a woman that does not need a man is a thing to be reckoned with.
Yeah.
Hell hath no fury like a woman scorned.
A woman, Victoria Scone.
Yes. Hell hath no fury. So since I've been out and about and proud, I've never felt more self-assured, self-aware, self-confident. I feel like I've been able to blossom into who I've always really known I was, but not had the confidence to do so. Yeah, I fucking love being gay. Do you? I love being queer.
Yeah, I love being a puff mood. Love it.
Absolutely love it.
But even, something I talk about in my book as well is I used to think I was trans for a while. Mm-hmm. And that's a whole different thing, because that's discovering yourself again. It's kind of breaking down the barriers. So I think during that kind of conversation with myself, I just was so nervous about being a final finished product, being perfect, being able to be put in a lovely box, labeled, and then put to the side. So I was like, if I'm trans, I need to know, right here, right now, and start transitioning, all that. And it was from talking to kind of my peers around me. They were like, that's not how it is. It's your journey. You discover it. You work your way around it. It takes years for people to figure out who they are as a person. And I think we have drag to thank for that, for opening us up to these things at such a kind of early age, almost.
Breaking down those gender barriers that that are thrust upon us by society.
Thrust upon us like a scone, that scone you shoved in my mouth the other day.
You loved it.
I loved every bit of it.
You'd be surprised. You think, scone is fine, shove it down. Without the jam and the cream, that is the driest motherfucker you've ever had in your mouth in your life.
That was dry. Real dry. When do you feel the most kind of pride and joy in your identity, do you think, Vic?
For me, it's difficult, because probably when I do drag, which is ironic, because out of drag, I would say I'm not very feminine presenting, as, I'm not, I don't want to say my weight has something to do with that at all, but I like to present a little bit butch. But in drag, I like to present hyper feminine, or like just a complete caricature of a woman. So weirdly, it's when I'm in drag, but that's not how I like to self-identify when I'm not in drag. So I think I like experimenting between the two and being able to do that freely. I have a lot of joy when I'm out and about and I'm, with my girlfriend and I'm feeling a little bit masculine. But then I have ultimate euphoria when I'm in drag and I'm the most gorgeous, stunning thing you've ever seen in your life. What about you? When do you feel the joy?
Do you know what I've learned through this whole process, and Drag Race has really kind of taught me this, is being a plus-size person in a world made for thin people. I think there is no greater joy to me, like I said about seeing Alice perform when I was younger, there's no greater joy to me than walking in a room full of people who don't like fat people or thought Bimini should have won purely based on her, size versus mine. Because again, if you think someone's a better drag queen, fair enough. But if you're just judging them based on size, sex, gender, whatever, that's when you're an arsehole. You're an arsehole for that. But I feel my most pride in accepting my body wholeheartedly for every stretch mark, for every curve, for every roll. I love it. Sometimes I gain weight, sometimes I lose weight. That's why all my costumes are stretched, baby. They're ready to go. But I feel so much pride and joy and acceptance in myself because I'm able to look back on when I didn't accept it, and I look into a world that doesn't accept it and I go, you would please learn something from me and learn to accept it like I have, and we would get on much more swimmingly.
Absolutely. There's nothing more beautiful than being so confident in your own body and other people being threatened by that.
Oh my God, people are so threatened by it. They see it as such I think because as a fat person, they expect you to be bubbly and funny and that's it. They expect you to be Dawn French, Melissa McCarthy. But don't get too serious now. You've got to be the clown. Yes. You've got to be the jester. You can't be too serious. So, I like fucking them up a wee bit.
Absolutely.
Just, twisting the knife.
By pure coincidence, we recorded this episode the same day that Drag Race Season 3 premiered, so thank you to Victoria for fitting us in on what must have been a very nerve-wracking day, and thanks to Lawrence, who joined us bright and early in full drag from a bookshop on their promotional tour. If you like this episode, make sure you hit subscribe and share this podcast with all your friends, and why not give us a cheeky 5-star review too. Tune in next week to hear a conversation between Mia Berrin from Pom Pom Squad and Phoenix Arnhorn from Soft Cult. Until next time, thank you for listening to Coming Out Chats.